Hello, and welcome to the show. This is just a short intro before we begin the episode, which I'm sure you will enjoy. We have a few things to share which are specials this weekend. If you're a writer and love the process and inspiration of writing on a classic typewriter, you can experience this magic opportunity by purchasing your very own typewriter. We do also have vintage or antique typewriters. Or if you already have a typewriter and it's broken, we are able to repair it so that your writing process can be that much more beautiful and enjoyable. Whether you're sitting at home at a cafe or traveling the world, you can now be motivated to write anywhere, anytime. Next, staying on the topic of writing. If you would like to purchase my poem book, they are now published. Next, staying on the topic of writing. If you would like to purchase my poem books, they are now published on the Narcissist Recovery Guidebook, as well as the Grand Soul Awakening calendar collection of inner child poems on friendship and healing, as well as Divine Love Lessons, a poetic love story of returning back to your core self and a human journey of understanding your higher calling, which has a touch of synchronicity, numerology, ascension patterns, spiritual insights to soothe the consciousness and support the ego into pure, authentic soul growth. And it's a great gift for yourself or for a friend who appreciates the art of poetry. Next, you can order the personalized art painting, which is perfect for birthday gifts and holidays. And it's just a great opportunity to become creative and to inspire the younger generation or adults as well. And you can also decide which kind of art pieces, which can be seasonal or biblical or a Disney character, or really anything that inner child find for. Next, tutoring is also available from grade school to middle school to high school to English courses. We have books for math, reading, writing, essay help, resume help, college admissions, essay help, all kinds of tutoring. Last but not least, we have virtual ballet lessons and classes available for all ages and all levels. There are ballet bar workouts included, and all you need is just a little bit of space and a chair or something to hold on to. And this is going to be with accompanying classical orchestra music to bring a sense of levity and joy and just fun overall, while also strengthening the body and adding flexibility and grace to your daily posture. And I have a unique experience as I grew up performing at Lincoln Center with the York City Ballet, with my City Ballet, with Alvin, Ailey, American Dance Theater, and also at Madison Square Garden. So this unique mix of artistic expression has inspired me to create a whole list of ballet choreography, ballet classes, and to inspire people to come along on the journey to awaken their appreciation and their gratitude for body movement and body positivity. And I'm excited to share this with everybody, and everybody is open to join. It's available for everybody. And we focus on creating elegant movement to the rhythm of the music, which makes you feel comfortable in your own space, at your own pace, and in your own skin. And this gives you an opportunity to enjoy the journey of imagination, beauty, integration, and create authentic gratitude for yourself, for others, for music, and for movement. Classes are in session and all are. And if you would like to have me on as a guest on your podcast and would like to be a guest on my podcast, please do let me know. And I am also collecting new interviews with upcoming and for information on any of the things that I have mentioned. If you would like to participate in, or to purchase, or to just join the community, please send me an email at growth and grace mindset at gmail.com. After all of the logistics are out of the way, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast, where we talk about all things wellness, mental health, relationships, astrology, spirituality, healing, and so much more. And today we have a special guest, Kelsey. She is a licensed therapist and dating coach who has dedicated her career to helping women use evidence-based psychology principles to attract emotionally available men fast. And her proprietary methods have been featured in the New York Times, Time Magazine, CBC, that's CBC Radio, right? T-Mobile, and more. So welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk about dating, relationships, and all things connecting with people, like in romantic ways.
Yeah, me too. I know we were just talking before we started recording a bit about how this is never taught to us and we learn just through trial and error, which involves getting our hearts broken, or we maybe get lucky and have like a great mentor, or our parents had a great relationship. And that's not most of us, So I'm super excited to talk about this.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, it's so true when it comes to like meeting people even. There are so many different approaches. Like some people kind of talk about blind dates or online dating or just meeting people the natural way, but I feel like it's kind of hard to do it these days.
Yeah.
Just kind of like meeting people out in the open because who knows, like
Yeah.
safety, precaution, and all those kind of things. What is your take
Yeah.
on online dating when it comes to like trying to make a long-term, like healthy relationship?
Yeah, so I know that online dating is kind of under fire right now, and people are really just burnt out from it, which I totally get. But I am actually a huge proponent of online dating. And the reason why is because, and I think we're going to talk about this a little today, like, the things that really matter in a relationship to you individually are things that you can actually fill your profile with in such a way that you're attracting the right people to you and you're repelling the wrong people away versus the person you meet at the dog park. Like, great, I mean, you both have dogs, like you've got that going for you, but like, what about your core values? Like, are you going to be completely at odds politically or in religiously, or ways that really might matter to you? So I think it just depends on how much time and energy you have and are willing to invest in dating, because if you want to meet someone organically, like, you sure can, but it's probably going to take you a lot longer, and you're going to have to get to know somebody on that more surface level a little bit and then get to those deeper questions, versus being able to know that you're only going on dates with people that you know are already an excellent fit for you, which is what you can do through online dating. So that's why I really like it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like not everybody has the opportunity to meet somebody at the grocery store or on the
Right.
street. If it doesn't
Yeah.
happen, like it's okay to try that route. And I feel like as long as you're kind of like you have those boundaries, and I feel like a lot of people, especially so many of our listeners are empaths who are this like kind-hearted people, and they just want to be kind and they want to kind of like give a second chance sometimes. So I think it's kind of like important to realize what are your standards, what are your values, and I think that's actually the hardest thing. I've had a few clients who were doing inner child healing work and getting down to the root of like what their actual core values were completely helped them like shift their reality, even it helped shift their identity because it's like when we're growing up we don't necessarily know our core values. We're probably just like
No.
going with the flow or finding, friendships or at work or hanging out. But when we're actually like asked to find our values, I feel like that's a big part, right? Of like being
Huge.
successful in online dating and just dating in
Oh
general.
my God. I mean, I teach to my students that, like, your values underlie your entire life, and that's why it's so wild that we're never taught this. Like, there's an exercise that I do with my students, my clients, where I walk them through like 100 values, and they put them in a column on a piece of paper, important, very important, not important. And it's so clarifying. And then it becomes like, I mean, a lot of my clients also struggle with self-esteem and not feeling like good enough, or insecurities and self-confidence, and like, what do people think about me? And it's like, it's so, for me at least, was so groundbreaking to realize that like we don't even need to take feedback, especially in the realm of dating, from people who don't even share our values. It's like we're chasing this person who like isn't even giving us what we need, and we care so much about whether they like us, when it's like, wait a second, they're not even, I don't even value what they're bringing to the table, right? Like, it's just such a flip of perspective that I think is so helpful in dating and just in life, you know?
Yeah, that's really true. Finding that
Mm-hmm.
kind of ground in like self-respect, that's like a huge thing. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting to mention about like self-esteem because today is National Middle Child Day. And I did tell
Really?
them, yes, and it's like
Oh my
to like the birth order and how that actually like I feel like I've read a few articles before and I feel like it has kind of like an effect on people, both you're the older sibling, the only child, the youngest child, the middle child, like that Brady Bunch Jan thing where it's
God.
like, what about like feeling neglected or rejected or abandoned? So many of us have experienced these realities sometimes. And you don't have to be a middle child, but you can experience this really, any birth order you are. Just by existing, you could feel this. So, yeah, how do people like try to find that confidence when they do feel kind of left out or like you mentioned politically or like traditionally they have their own views and they might not feel like accepted.
Yeah. I think that's such a great question. And it's so hard because when you're in the wrong group of people for your values, you feel so on the outside, like rejected, not good enough. And that can become your whole story about yourself. But when you find the right group of people that are like minded and value the same things as you, like are also empathetic, right? All these things, or share your like passion for social justice or whatever it is, all of the sudden it's like, oh wait, there's nothing wrong with me, right? And it's so hard that like it takes that to for us to see that. But I think knowing that is really helpful, even if you're somebody who's in a place of feeling like you're not fitting in at this moment, that like somewhere out there 1000% is your group of people that is going to help you realize that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just maybe you're raised in a family that you think very differently from, or you found yourself in a friend group that is just not really aligned because you work together or you're in school together or something like that. Yeah. So just, I
Yeah.
think like remembering that that's really out there, I think is huge. And that like, sure, we all have things to work on, but like, I've never met anyone that I'm like, something's wrong with you. Like, no, it's like, it's like nothing's wrong with you, but like, here's some growth edges. And also like, why are we taking opinions from and feedback from people that we don't even value? Like, let's find you your people and then learn and grow with those people.
100% yes, I love that. It's so true because when people are kind of growing up and raised in a scapegoat situation where they feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're a victim for a while, for a long while, and then when they
Yeah.
have to go out into the world and make themselves, a priority, it's so hard
Yeah.
sometimes to find that the
Yeah.
switch to shift in that. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
important when it comes to like
Yeah.
dating and relationships. You can finally start to kind of look at yourself more and yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
take priority.
Yeah. 100%. And thinking about like, who are you dating? Like, are you taking advice from, or feedback rather, like from the person who isn't even giving you the time of day, and you've got your whole self-worth wrapped up in whether they text you back or not, because one day they text you something that makes you feel so wanted and makes you smile, and then the next day they don't even answer, and you're here like your whole self-worth is being based on that, not even realizing that there really are people out there who will text you every day, like make you feel like that all of the time. Like it's not a fairy tale. There's issues to work through in all relationships, but like that our self-worth becomes based on how people romantically respond to us, or how interested they are. And that's a really dangerous place to put your self-worth. And so I think that's really important to remember, that like you have to really cultivate that yourself. And when someone behaves in that way with you, where they're not consistent or what have you, to not make that about you and to say, okay, that's just not a fit for me. Maybe that works for someone else who doesn't want that consistency, but I do, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with me. And how do I strategically attract somebody who is emotionally available to do
Yes, yes, that's totally important. And going into that topic of unavailable, emotionally unavailable
that? Yeah,
men, for example, so many people
yeah.
have experienced this, and it's like you said in the beginning, it could be so sweet and so caring and so kind. How can we kind of weed out that kind of manipulation to get to the root of like, is this a mature, emotionally mature person that I can like connect with long term?
Yeah. Well, I want to say this first too. I think that there are some people who are truly emotionally manipulative and know what they're doing. But I actually think there's far more people who really believe, like, they feel a desire, right? I want a relationship. I wish I could have a partner, and therefore I'm ready for a relationship. But those are two different things, right? Being ready for a relationship and wanting one, very different things. And so one of the most common signs, to your point, of somebody who isn't really emotionally available is somebody who goes all in the beginning. They become really interested and obsessed with you, and notice the red flag in yourself too, of like, wow, I feel on top of the world because of how this person is treating me, instead of because I've cultivated that for myself. And of course it feels good to have this attention, but like my whole self-worth is not dependent on that, right? So we see that where guys will go all in, but they're emotionally bypassing the intimacy part. So they do want a partner. They want to hold your hand, act like your boyfriend, snuggle with you, have sex, whatever, help you move furniture. But then if you really look closely, it's like he hasn't really opened up to you. He hasn't really shared anything vulnerable. Like if you ask him a deeper question, like, what's your biggest fear in relationships? Or like, what's something really hard that you went through? He's like going to dodge it, go around it, turn it back to you, like, or play it off like, oh, like make a joke or something, right? So I would say look for those deeper cues of emotional availability, like somebody who can really share about themselves, hard things that they've been through, vulnerable emotions like fear or anxiety or regret is a pretty vulnerable emotion versus like anger, right? Sadness would be a vulnerable emotion. Look for those things and look for somebody who is not necessarily like obsessed with you, but wants to get to know you on a deeper level over time. And he's not like throwing all of his friends and hobbies out the window to spend every single day with you, but he's interested, he's consistent, he wants to see you, but he's not abandoning his own life, because somebody who has a strong sense of self-worth is not going to abandon their own life, male or female, right, for a new partner.
Exactly.
So somebody who goes like all in, and then we have the opposite, right? On the other end of the spectrum, but just as common, I think, is the guy who like from the beginning is very inconsistent, but he's throwing you those spurts of attention and saying things that do make you smile and feel really good. And this is the danger of not doing that self work to cultivate your sense of self first, because you're very susceptible to, oh my God, that felt so good, I need another hit of that attention. And you get hooked on that breadcrumbing, inconsistent relationship pattern, versus looking at it and going, this is like nice to hear, but like what I actually want is for you to be consistent in communication with me and plan dates and get to know me. And so that's just not even attractive to me now, right? That's how that looks when you've done that work.
I love that. Yes, those are such good things to keep in mind. And I feel like when you're kind of getting to know somebody, you kind of have to be a detective, like a journalistic detective, kind of, because
Yes.
you do have to kind of like uncover those cobwebs of, are they doing this to please me? Am I accepting
Right.
this to please me? Like there's so many different realities and perspectives that we kind of have to take off, that, those glasses we're like seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rose colored glasses, to be like, are we like pleasing each other, or are we kind of for real trying to find compatibility? And how,
Yeah.
what is a good measure of compatibility?
Yes. Good question. So, I think most of us have been taught you meet someone, oh, where are you from? What do you like to do for fun? What do you do for work? And those are not bad questions to ask, or like, oh, we both have a golden retriever, or we both love margaritas, or like
Fantastic.
we both we
But
both love.
more like today we have like pink shirts on. It's like amazing.
Right, exactly. Oh my God, right? It's like cool. I mean, that's really fun. That's a fun detail, but that's the reality is those are the not the things that psychologists have known for years really carry relationships to the long term, right? Even things like, oh my God, height and is this person your physical type and are they taller than you, right? It's like never have I ever said to a couple in couples therapy, like, just go out on a date and just bask in how tall your husband is and just that'll fix everything, right? Like that's not how this works. So, of course, it's not bad to want or have preferences, but I think it's really important to keep the focus on what really matters and not get swept up in the guy with like the high paying job and the six pack abs and he's tall, but he treats you like shit, right? I mean, if you can get all the things you need, then and he's got those things, that's great. But just really keeping the focus on things like, your core values. So, like we talked about, right? Your values underlie everything in your life. And most of us were never even taught to think about that. But
Yeah.
is family really important to you? Is achievement important to you? What does like success mean to you, right? Are you a person who's chasing a seven-figure business? Are you a person who wants to retire by 40 and live a very slow living kind of life, right? Like, what do you really value in your day to day life and in a relationship in general, like in terms of political values, religious values, like those kind of things that feel like I have to have this in alignment with my partner for this to work. Those are the things to really focus on. That goes into things like world views, right? In terms of I know you mentioned a lot of people here are empaths, which is great. Like if you're an empath, you probably need another empath. Like
Yeah.
I'm an empath. I see the world that way. Like I was trained, I've always been that way, but then also with my training in psychology, like it's really what we learn to do is to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And so if I
Exactly.
hear about something, I'm like, oh, well, who's to say that I wouldn't do the exact same thing if I was in those circumstances? Versus an ex-boyfriend of mine who would say, oh, that's their fault. They just shouldn't have made that choice and they deserve whatever comes to them for it, right? Like just different perspectives of viewing people in the world. It's a little bit harder to articulate like what a worldview is, right? But it's just that lens through which you see the world where maybe you really understand and value mental health awareness and treatment versus someone who's like, depression isn't real, just go for a walk and you'll feel better, right? Those are going to clash in a relationship. So being mindful of those things and then your lifestyle and your life goals. So if you want kids and you want kids, don't date somebody who isn't sure about it or who doesn't want kids, right? Like that's also going to clash in a relationship. So those kind of compatibilities are really important too.
I love that. Yes, those are like important qualities that we have
Yeah.
to just discover within ourselves. It's like, and that's sometimes the tricky part. It's like, what do we actually want? Because people
Right.
be like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I want this, maybe I want that, but it's like, what do
Yeah.
you actually want? Because that's going to make
Uh,
things kind of so much easier. Because sometimes guys will come up to you and be like, you're so cool, let's hang out, let's do it casually. And you'll be like, oh, okay, like, what if you're more traditional and you're more serious?
mm,
You're going to accept that you're going
right.
to be leading them on, you're going to allow them to lead you, and like, there's no clarity.
Yeah.
I feel like getting
Yeah.
to the clarity is the most important thing. It can sometimes feel like an interrogation kind of process, but as long as you're respecting them
Right.
and you're like respecting yourself in the process, I feel like
100%. Somebody recently asked, I do this like Q&A usually every week on my Instagram stories, and somebody asked this week, like, what questions would you wait to ask and why? And I was like, I honestly can't think of one. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like somebody can always say, I'm not comfortable answering that. And we don't take on the responsibility to manage and like anticipate their emotions if that's going to be a question that makes them uncomfortable. It's just like, hey, I'm going to ask this in a respectful manner. And of course, if you're not comfortable sharing, like I totally understand. But where are your thoughts at in regards to desire to have children or not? Like that's a totally fair question, but there's a lot of people who are afraid to ask it until date 3 or 4. Well, by that point, not only have you wasted time, but you maybe are getting a little emotionally invested, and then you have to reconcile with that. And maybe we end up signing on and settling and saying, oh, maybe they'll change their mind, and it doesn't work out, right? So I think that yeah, it's really important to have that clarity for yourself and to not be afraid to ask about things and to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. If that's not what you're looking for, no hard feelings, wish you the best. But you're here to find a partner. And it's not this like romantic fairy tale we've been taught where everything just seamlessly falls into place without any awkward or uncomfortable conversations or things like that, you know?
Yeah, totally, 100%. Like, yeah, that's such a
Yeah.
good point. And it's like, even when people are afraid, to kind of like, why are you afraid to ask that? You know, what are you actually afraid of? Because most of the times, I mean, I feel like all of us went through that at one point or another one, and we have those questions, and we feel like, why can't I ask that now? Like, what am I actually afraid of? Am I afraid that I'm weird? My like wants are weird because they're not going to be respected. And I feel like a lot of times it is that. It's like we have those beliefs. We know what we want, but we're afraid to be rejected. But I feel like
Yeah.
that's a big part. Just accept that obviously compatibility is not always aligned. That's why you're searching for that and you're kind of trying to align with that. And when
Right.
it is that rejection, I feel like it's so important to just not take it personally because
Uh-huh.
so personally, like one time a while ago, I was talking to a guy and I was like, I had a great time today, but I feel like we're not very compatible. Like, wish you well. And he was like, oh, sorry. I thought we had a great day. I thought the food was amazing. It's like it's not about that. It's like
Right.
people don't
Yeah.
understand times when they're taking it so personally because we are
Mm-hmm.
investing our time and we do hope to get that, reflection back. But to be real, it's so important to be real and to
Yeah.
have to bring that clarity to the table. It's like if we're not
Yeah.
compatible, you should say that.
Yes.
And if somebody says it to you, that's really nice, and that's an honest way also to kind of communicate that. And
100%.
as much as we do have, it's painful to accept that
Mm-hmm.
thing like betrayal, but it's not betrayal. It's just a redirection. I always say like it's
Yeah.
not a direction, it's a redirection. It's gonna take you
Yeah.
to your new timeline. So yeah, I
Yeah.
would help to people who like do feel like, rejection.
Yeah. Yes, totally. I always say rejection is a byproduct of dating. That's it. It literally is part of it. Like you can't, almost no one gets to avoid it. Like almost nobody meets one person and that's who they marry. Like literally, I know one person in my whole life personally that's happened to from a dating app. Like most people, myself included, you're going on many dates and maybe there's more times that you hear no than you are saying no. And maybe that's also some information for you about like that clarity on what are you looking for? Are we clear enough? Are we like weeding out people enough? Right. But yeah, it comes with the territory of dating. It's like interviewing for a job, right? It's like, is this a fit or not? And I hate to even make that comparison because it's not sexy, it's not romantic. But the truth is that healthy dating is not about getting swept off your feet and feeling like, so good that this person wants you or you have all these options. Like it is a process of like, are we a fit? I'm an apple. Are you an apple or are you an orange? Like, oh, you're an orange? Okay, see you later. Bye. It's literally that, right? And just
Yeah,
that's why that sense of self is so important because we have to be able to say, yeah, this is not what they're looking for, what I'm looking for. And I always tell people, like, if you were seeing someone and you thought things were going so well and then they thought we're not a fit, right there is your mismatch. The fact that there's something that bothered them enough to say, this is not going to work for me when it didn't bother you at all, that's a mismatch right there, right? And so just like moving along, knowing that that's a byproduct of dating, it doesn't say anything about you. It's not even worth asking for feedback from a person you went on 2 dates with who has doesn't know you, may not even share your values. Like just move along. And it's just really like practice of noticing when you're ruminating on a rejection and like, oh, let me just actually shift my mindset to remember what I just learned about rejection, and it's not doesn't have to say anything about me. It's a byproduct of dating, la la la. It's just really replacing those thoughts in my mind and doing, I think, some daily affirmations. Journaling around this can be really helpful too. So that's something that a lot of my clients
I
do as
love
well.
that. Yes, journaling and those affirmations. Yeah, that's such a big thing. I
Yeah.
feel like it brings us so much kind of back to ourselves, like, trying to build a sense of like confidence and, like deserving things, allowing yourself to deserve things, because I feel like so much of dating is seeing like the reflection part of yourself and to feel kind of like what level are you at in your self-acceptance and what you're going to accept from somebody else. And especially like so many people have gone through trauma and gone through different experiences that it's like when they do have kind of like this anxious attachment style kind of personality, or they're currently in this phase, what are some green flags that they might think are red flags, but they're actually green flags?
Yes. I love this. Yeah, I would say that like a lot of women, myself included, like a lot of the things that when you've had toxic relationships that you're used to or you find attractive, like a healthy partner isn't going to have them. Like that inconsistency of, am I going to hear from him? Am I not? It feels exciting. It's really like not healthy, right? It's really not supportive. And so you might find it really boring that a guy like is very consistent with you and there's no like wondering, like it feels too easy, like you don't have to chase him. That can feel really boring and like not exciting. But I think it's really important to check in with like, okay, is he really boring? Like the things I know about him, his values, like does he really just he's a bump on a log and he sits at home and he does nothing and he has nothing to say? Sure, he's boring. But if he's engaging you in conversation, you share values, he's consistent, like that's probably a you situation to really examine like why am I perceiving this to be boring or unattractive, or the ick, right? The ick is such a trend right now. Like, oh, I got the ick because, it was too easy or he was too nice. And I'm like, what do you mean he was too nice? I mean, like, right? Like, I get that.
I feel like self-sabotage 101.
Right. Right. It's like if he really has no opinions of his own and he's always agreeable, I mean that is quite boring, and I think that women often do that too, like when we're in that place of low self-worth and we really just our focus is does he like me? Does he like me? Does he like my outfit? Does he think I look good? Right? Like we can fall into that too. And it is unattractive. Like a healthy partner doesn't want someone who's just like, oh yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, like they want to be challenged, engaged in conversation. They want to hear your thoughts. So, I mean, if a guy is truly like has nothing to him of substance, obviously, maybe that's not your person. But somebody who lives a full life and can engage you in conversations, but isn't offering that playing games kind of, you never know if I'm going to text you vibe, like that would be somebody who's really healthy. Also, I think this is a huge one for women, but a man who asks if he can kiss you. It's like, oh my God, women think that's so unattractive. Like, just kiss me. But I mean, I think that that is such a green flag because they're asking you for consent. They're also demonstrating that, like, we just directly communicate. We don't, like, try to feel each other out. Obviously, when you're in a relationship, you just kiss your partner and that's fine. But when you just met somebody, there's no reason to assume they're comfortable with that, no matter what signs you think you're getting from them. And so I think that that's another one that women think is really like boring or unsexy. But I think we have to look at like what really makes a relationship healthy. And part of it is that direct communication, honoring your autonomy, right? Like checking in, asking for consent, all those things.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much. Yeah, it's such a good point because now there's so many different kind of people like whether you're feminism or like it's like you still want to be respected enough to ask. Like you mentioned consent. It's so important, especially in the beginning. It's kind of like this is a stranger if you don't know them, if you just meet them for the first time, a few dates in a row. It's like it's interesting how we do have to look at ourselves, and so many women actually do have to kind of heal their toxic traits because so many times in relationships, it's common that women treat men like babies. They baby them. Like maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
childhood wound or some kind of trauma or something. But when it comes to like asking so many questions on dates, I kind of figured this out early on when I used to be so excited and so like I'm very
Mm-hmm.
extrovert, so I love asking questions and talking and things. But
Yeah.
after the date, I realized like, wait, like I'm the one who asked all the questions, and I know
Mm.
nothing about this person and what they want to know about me. Like they haven't really asked any questions. So I started like asking very minimal questions, and then I kind of was like okay with the awkward silences because I want to see what's going to be. Like if I don't control the situation, how is it going to come about? And I feel like it's such a good kind of practice to do because
Yeah.
you can see about so much about the other person and about the potential connection or lack thereof. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, I love that as a weed out strategy on dates, right? Because it's like, is this the kind of guy who maybe has more of that traditional view of relationships where it's like, I show up and the woman, like, happy wife, happy life kind of vibe, like, woman controls everything and I'm just here, like, and I'll agree to whatever and whatever. And it's like, or is he going to be like a co creator of the relationship with you,
Yeah,
right? I think that's much more like that modern equal partnership vibe. And yeah, there's a lot of guys who are just not. They're like, oh, if it there's someone I know recently. It's like, oh, if it wasn't for my fiance, like I'd probably just have a couch and a TV and that's it. And I'm like, really? Like that's all you? That's you? It's just like that in emotional form. Is that guy who's just like, just don't have not much to say and man a few words versus someone who's truly introspective and engages in deep thinking and conversation with you, I think is a huge difference.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's so true, and especially if you are an empath, and we are empaths, then they're
Yeah.
able to not feel kind of like on the same level if they're doing all the work again. They're kind of pushing everything forward. So I feel like for empaths, it is really important and also challenging to take a step back. And especially if you're a woman, the feminine is the like yin and yang. She's the yin, and she's kind of like the submissive, traditionally submissive and detached. But you don't have to do that like fully. But to take that secondary moment to take a step back sometimes, this is really going to put into focus kind of like what kind of relationship is this actually if I am taking a step back, like how is this going to, work itself out, especially if you are the type to want a traditional relationship or
Right.
if you want to have like that traditional household or whatever. And it's like going back to like values and saying what we want, that's why it's so important to kind of like state that directly.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having those traditional values or desiring that, but having ways of, first of all, getting that clarity to your point, moving out of indecisiveness to learn how to trust your own judgment of what you want, which takes some practice and some skills and some time and some guidance sometimes. But then, having ways that you can weed that out. So for you, if you're looking for somebody who is going to be a co creator in that relationship and lean in and engage with you, I think that practice of leaning back a bit and not filling every silence and not asking every question, letting him do some of that is a great test of that. If you want to be a person who really like leads that dynamic, then you go for it. If you want a guy to lead the whole thing and you want to mainly just like sit back and let him do all of it, like order for you, whatever, I mean, go for it. There's nothing wrong with any of those, but knowing what it is and how you can weed that out is important.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
Dating is just another part of life, and it's like we have to just embrace it. And
Yeah.
whether you're like single, dating in a relationship, it's like
Yeah.
just use dating as a kind of like a game, and it's kind of like you set your own rules. You come up with the rules and
Yes.
you play the game. So I feel like that's a really interesting way to see it.
Right. I mean, you set the rules and like, listen, it's if somebody, instead of, oh, what is he going to think if I bring this up or ask this question? Okay, well, it's going to tell you information either way. If you ask a question that you think is perfectly appropriate, as long as you ask it respectfully, right? and somebody's like, oh, I can't believe you asked that. That's so inappropriate. Oh, we've just known each other. Let's have fun and see where it goes. That's not your person. It's information for you either way, right? It's like there's going to be somebody out there who dates the way you date and who prioritizes things you prioritize, and that's going to be your person. So I say, like, within reason and being respectful, date the way you want to date and allow the person who's the good fit for you to reveal that via their reaction.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's so true.
Yeah,
And it's like it's so simple in a way. I think we just have to like realize
I
that.
know. Yes,
I like
it
what
is. I would say so. People overcomplicate it, and I get why, because there's so. I mean, I even remember before the freaking internet and influencers and whatever, Instagram, like as a teenager reading magazines of like how to get a guy to pay attention to you, chase. I was like, oh my god, maybe I need to wear my hair like this, I need to do this. And that's that like self-worth seeking energy that I used to have too, that led me to so many unsatisfying and unhealthy relationships, because I didn't just have that secure locked down date from that place, see who shows me that they're a match. I was like, maybe how do I get this guy to like me instead of what do I think about him?
Oh yes, I love that. So many of us, yes, like we really was not as kids, as teenagers, and like we wanted to be like the adults, wanted to like, please, we wanted to just please, and I feel like it's not a bad
Yeah.
thing because we do want to be good
Yes.
people. We want to connect with people and find a
Yeah.
perfect match. But along the way, we do have to kind of realize and peel back those security layers, just
Yeah.
want to accept ourselves and accept those parts of ourselves that maybe are kind of like suppressed and haven't been fully expressed or understood. And yeah, it is such a journey. And I feel like it's also like a big thing that some mentors are actually saying that, like they're saying date once you've healed. And I feel like that concept is so strange because yes, you shouldn't go to a date if you're completely
Yeah.
not aware of yourself, your reality, because we do
Yeah.
go through things and we're always, that's why I feel like we're always healing. We're always on
Yes.
different trajectories of healing. So
Yeah.
what is your take on like dating after you're healing, dating after you've healed fully? Like what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I would say like there's no such thing as fully healed. It's like, especially this is part of a worldview, right? Like especially, you know, if you're a person who is into like self development and growing, like you're always probably going to be doing that, right? At the same
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so find that person who agrees with you, right? That like, oh, let's grow together. But I mean, some things to think about too, right? I think there's a little bit of a line there where there are some signs you're not ready to date, and it's not like because you're not fully healed, but maybe you're not at a point yet where you can be emotionally open or emotionally available yourself, or you don't have that clarity yet about what you're looking for. And sometimes, to be fair, you get that clarity via having relationships that aren't the right fit, right? I mean, you invest in programs or mentors or things like that that teach you, or you learn and you learn both, and, via relationships. But I would say in general, right, like if dating feels like a need, like you need this person to regulate your emotions, you can't spend time alone or enjoy time alone, you feel like there's a void inside of you, or you don't know how to make yourself happy, and you're bored in life or you're unhappy in life, that's not the place that you want to date from, right? You really want to date from the place of having like a pretty fulfilling individual regulated life that somebody is going to add value to, who is also a fully independent individual, right? Like this whole you complete me thing, I also really dislike that, because I think we're complete and whole people joining lives together to create a really fulfilling, beautiful life together. So you want to be sort of that like whole person on your own, and find somebody who also is not somebody who needs like rescuing, or you feel like you need rescuing, but like generally speaking, you can regulate your emotions, or you have support people that you can go to, right? Like the guy you went on 2 dates with, if you have like a day from hell, he's not the only person you have to talk to about it. That's the kind of fullness in life that you want to have. Generally being over your exes, like you can have emotion about it, but it shouldn't be like tearing you up inside. You're thinking about them every day. That would obviously be you're not quite ready to date. I think things like that are really important to consider too.
That is a really good point, actually. Yes, there are
Mm-hmm.
those times in life where you do have to prioritize kind of like healing yourself. And if we're lucky and we're given that space, I feel like that's a really good opportunity to actually take that time. So that is a really good
Yeah,
point that we can, if we're able to see the perspective and like, oh wow, like I am actually kind of a little bit damaged from the past, and I'm going to give it to
right.
myself, like a few months to heal, to focus on healing, integrating. That's amazing. Yes, that I totally agree with, because then
Yeah,
if we go on dates and we kind of feel like codependent and desperate, like that's it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be happy, right?
no.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like once we do
Yeah, it's a recipe for
out,
the wrong relationship.
sorry.
No, it's a recipe for the wrong relationship, I was saying. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I feel like once we're able to integrate those aspects of ourselves, and we're able to kind of like
Yeah.
heal those versions, we're going to be new people also, and we're going to attract, like, I think, like newer, higher levels of experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, healthy, secure, emotionally available men. They're looking for healthy, secure, emotionally available women. I mean, doesn't mean you have to be securely attached, but like really having done some of that work and investment in yourself to date from that place as much as you can, I think is something that healthy partners are looking for, right? Especially men. It's so, I mean, people say it's like so rare to find those guys. And I think, sure, maybe there's less of them than there are women just because of the way we've socialized men to not do those emotional things. But the ones that are out there, they are plentiful. I think they come you notice them more when you're in that place yourself because you're drawing more attention to yourself from those people instead of the guy who like texts you sometimes and sometimes not. Because they notice um, the way that women carry themselves, and they're looking for someone who is approaching dating from that place of like, are we a fit or not? I don't need you to like me. You're a stranger from the internet. I'm here to see if we're compatible, right? You're very nice and respectful, but like it's the truth. He's a stranger from the internet. You do not need him to like you. You just need to find out, is he compatible with you to go on date number two, right? Yeah.
Yes. And how do you know when you're feeling kind of like inspired to go on date number two?
Oh, to go on date number two, I mean, I generally say like you want to just touch on some values based things if you haven't already. So I would say, like, to get to the first date, ideally, if you're dating online, you've asked like one or two weed out questions based on deal breakers and non negotiables to get to that point. Then, you get into a first date, and I would say, like, if they seem to be emotionally like available, as in like the kinds of things they can discuss with you, is sure, maybe they can go a little deeper in conversation if the conversation goes there, or they seem to kind of like have it together in that regard, where they're not just like obsessed with you either, like, oh my God, you're so beautiful the whole date, la la la. Like there's substance to the conversation. You align on values and you're seeing some of those green flags of the availability and maturity. Then I would say go on the next date, even if you thought it was awkward and you didn't have chemistry. Especially like I think that chemistry piece is so important because people think that you need to have that, and you really don't. Like that is something that can develop over time. You don't need to have it on the first date, is what I mean, and it can develop as you get to know somebody better. So if you think he's like objectively, you think he's attractive, like you're not repulsed by him, and you have these things aligned, go on another date and see.
I love that. That's such a good reminder, because I feel like so often chemistry is connecting to like a past trauma in a way, and that's like once we're healing from the past, it's kind of like those old chemical obsessive needs kind of like fade away. Not fully, but like they totally fade away in the way that before, when we might have attracted just like toxic relationship or toxic experiences, we're kind of going to feel repelled by it.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it's like when we're able to do the healing work, we feel repelled. And I think that's like one of the most interesting things to kind of like realize after we meet new people in our kind of like new version of ourselves. We're going to be like, wow, how could I have this like different feeling now. It's like, oh wow, like congrats to you because you've done the healing work.
Exactly. Yeah. So just making sure you're not hyper focusing on needing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful conversation. Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I had such a beautiful
Oh my
conversation.
gosh. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you?
Yeah. So the best way to connect with me, I would say, would be Instagram. So I'm there at Kelsey Wonderlin, and I've got a lot of free resources there. I post new content every day, so that would be the best place.
Okay, amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like our listeners are going to have such a
Yeah.
great takeaway, learning about dating from the empath perspective, from the growing perspective, and just like it's going to help empath navigate life and relationships so much kind of easier. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
advice and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.